Hi everyone, welcome back. In my first video I mentioned that I suffered a concussion and post-concussion syndrome last year, and I thought I would like to address that, talk a little bit about what that is, what happened, how I'm coping with it, because I've had a lot of questions from people. I know there'll be more questions, and honestly it's something I didn't know really anything about until it happened to me. So that's what today is going to be about. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about concussion and post-concussion syndrome. So to start with, what happened? What happened is a very silly cartoon character-esque accident where I slipped on the ground. Just completely, I stepped on a piece of clothing and just my feet slid out from underneath me and I hit the floor, actually right here at the feet of this chair. I hit the tile floor with my temple so hard that the sound woke my husband up from the next room. And I've had migraines since I was 8 and I have never felt pain like that. It was just, I couldn't speak, move. I could feel my brain bouncing, which was a really odd sensation. It took me a while to work out that it was a concussion. And even once I did, I don't think I understood. I know I didn't understand how severe that can be and how much I should have looked after it. And I tried to do too much. So basically I had blinding headaches for a week. I couldn't do almost anything. I'd do a little bit of reading on my phone and like that was it, I was done. Partly I couldn't concentrate, partly the pain. The problem is that it didn't die down. That even as the pain started to subside and I started to be able to think a bit more clearly, there were other things going on. So I saw a neurologist, I had an MRI and an MRA done, and she said, yep, there's no long-term damage there, there's no, there's no bleeds, there's nothing structurally wrong. Take it easy, limit your screen time, gradually build up your exercise and your stamina in different areas. Gave me some medicines, and I sort of tried to take it easy. It was very frustrating. But even after a few months I got to the point where I could do a lot. I had built up the stamina again. I could walk for longer periods of time. I could be out of the house for longer periods of time. I could do screens for a longer period of time, but there are a few key things I still couldn't do. And it was all my higher level cognitive. So I can't, still after 8 months, I really can't read books. I can read on my phone, I can read on my Kindle small amounts where I can have the font bigger. It's a big part of it. When it's small font, I can't manage. I have my computer constantly set at about 120%. It was at 150 before, now it's 120%, so everything's bigger. But the large part is the sustained concentration. So I can read like a 1-2 minute blog post, but I can't spend 20 minutes reading the same topic, the same book, which makes research really difficult. I can't take in huge amounts of information. I can't write well because writing takes sustained concentration. It's not just the writing, it's the formulating the thoughts, it's making sense of everything, it's collating and bringing it all together. And I wrote a blog post a couple months after the accident, and it took me weeks and weeks to do. The first time I tried to do it, I'd spread it over about 3 days and I still gave myself a concussion headache that lasted 2-3 days. And I had to leave it alone, come back later. And spreading it out over all that much time, and it was still very difficult to do. So that's been quite frustrating. It also affects other little cognitive things. I can't really do much maths in my head. I can't always find the words I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm missing a word. I can be a bit forgetful. I rely on a to-do list. If it's not written on the to-do list, it will not get done. Whatever I'm doing that. And as soon as I walk away from that task, I forget anything that I had discussed that was supposed to be done later. Like, that task is finished, erase, start the new thing. So I have to like constantly write things down. That was a big adjustment for me and for my husband, to have to watch me write something down or have to check in because I would forget, like seriously a minute later it's gone. big adjustment for me in that is that I've always had a lot of chronic health conditions, pain issues with my legs and my arms, the migraines and other stuff. My mind was the part of me I could rely on. When my body didn't work, my brain did, and it's been really difficult to come to terms with not being the person I used to be. I can function perfectly normally in all normal life situations, but I'm not me. I'm not who I used to be. I'm a bit slower. I'm a bit, I need a lot more context. Like, someone came to talk to me about something that we had discussed previously, and she was following up, and I had this blank look because I had no idea what was going on, and she got a bit like confused, like, I swear we talked about this, and I had to explain, no, it's not you, this is just me. I need the context. Now that you've given me the context, I remember and I can move on. It just takes me, I can't just jump straight in. I need a little bit more prep time, which I'm not used to, so having to be a different person. The other big thing is that concussion impacts your emotions. My emotions have been much more volatile. I go from 0 to 100. It's really bizarre to be able to both intellectually understand that what I'm reacting to is not a big deal, and yet be feeling these out of control emotions about it. It's emotionally exhausting, but constantly trying to rein myself in. Recently I started a new medication. It's an anti-anxiety medication that my doctor, the goal of it is to give me that buffer back, give me some space to be able to process the feelings before they overwhelm me completely. And that seems to be kicking in, and it definitely seems to be helping, which is great. Yeah, I guess I never really knew that post-concussion syndrome was a thing, but it turns out that if you have any other brain sensitivity, your chances of the concussion symptoms lasting longer is quite high. So if you have a history, let's say a family history of migraines, well, I don't just have a family history, I have a personal history of migraines. If you've had issues with anxiety, depression, insomnia, check. Then your risk factor goes up, and the other big risk factor is age. So if you're over the age of 40, you've got a much higher chance. Something like 30% of concussions over the age of 40 will develop post-concussion syndrome. And I'm not 40 yet, but I'm not that far away, so kind of hit all of those risk factors. So I guess it wasn't surprising, and I joined a post-concussion syndrome support group on Facebook. That's been really fantastic, just to see that other people have the same issues, have been through this. And I recognize that, honestly, I'm doing a lot better than other people. You know, some people don't have as much problems as I do, and some have a lot more. And so I'm thankful that it's not as bad as it could have been. But yeah, it is still frustrating. And so a big piece of me has been finding alternatives. Okay, I can't do this, what can I do instead? Well, I can't read books. So I've been listening to audiobooks. My husband got me a subscription to Audible, I think like a couple days after the concussion, and that's been great. I find it difficult. I've never been very good at taking in content audibly, and the concentration factor still applies. So what I've been doing is I've been listening to this epic 14-book fantasy series that I love, and I've read it multiple times. And so when I listen to that, I can keep track of the story because I already know the story. I'm not learning a new story. I do much better with familiar fiction than new fiction. With new TV shows, I'm like 2 episodes and I'm done. Like halfway through the 3rd episode, I can't concentrate anymore. But if it's familiar stuff, I can watch a bit more. Same with the books. So I do much better with a familiar book. If I'm listening to a new book, I'm probably got about a 20-minute hard stop. I won't be able to concentrate anymore. So that's one thing. Switching to video, trying to do these video audio stuff instead of writing, giving me an outlet that I'm capable of, is really good. I've done a lot of cooking, but I've also had to have written down recipe cards. I can't follow it in my head quite as well, but that's something I can do that's not going to trigger the concussion, because when I overdo it, I set myself back. I've had a couple of setbacks over the 8 months where I have just pushed a little bit too hard, and my brain has just gone, no, I'm done. So recently we spent 2 weeks in Australia with my family for Christmas, and I had 2 weeks of feeling really good. I could do everything I needed to do. I didn't feel very limited by the concussion, but I wasn't working. And as soon as I came back to Beijing and I was sitting at my computer and working, I started feeling very tired and just off. And there was this one day where I was talking to my husband in the morning. He's like, are you okay? Because I didn't seem right. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. I just don't feel quite right. And all day I just didn't quite feel right. And we're talking about it at the end of the day, and I just didn't have any answers. But I finally realized I have these two chronic health conditions where the first sign that something's wrong is that I just feel tired and off. And so I'm learning to listen to my body and take it seriously when I don't feel right. So when I found myself feeling off, going, okay, is it asthma? Is it concussion? Well, my emotions have been all over the shop today, so it's probably the concussion. And once I realized that, I felt better. I really hate not knowing what's going on. So when I can go, okay, there's a reason I feel this way and I need to take a break, that really helps a lot. I should probably mention the asthma too. That was my big health crisis of the year before, back in 2018. I had asthma as a kid, but I mean, from the age of 7 or something, I'd had no symptoms. I mean, I think I stopped taking any kind of medication around the age of 8 or 9. So like 30 years with no symptoms. And then I got a chest infection that triggered asthma, which I now know is very common. If you've had asthma as a child and grow out of it, that it can be re-triggered later on. Found out after this that my dad had had that same experience, which I didn't even know. But it triggered it, I mean, really badly, partly because it wasn't picked up immediately, partly because I was under-medicated when it was picked up. It wasn't until I had my second asthma attack that I realised it was an asthma attack. I went to see the doctor. And then, you know, I was on medication, went back to see him 2 weeks later, and he's like, oh, I'm really happy with your progress. I'm going to dial your medication back a bit. And within a couple of days, I had just horrendous asthma attacks. I had the first one at just after going to bed around 8 or 9 o'clock. And I woke up struggling to breathe. My husband asked if I wanted to go to the hospital, and I said no, because I'm an idiot. I had 2 more where I was vomiting, at which point at like 2 in the morning, I'm like, okay, yep, I will go to the hospital now. Had another asthma attack in hospital after being put on medication, at which point they started taking things a lot more serious and were giving me IV steroids, and it was crazy. We were there all night. Once I got back on, I finally worked out the dose of steroids that keeps me stable. I'm learning to recognize the symptoms, but it's really been a huge medical journey to have these 2 new chronic conditions to deal with and to manage, and I feel like I'm just starting to get a handle on it. But it's amazing how health issues affect your identity and who you think you are as a person. My health struggles have defined a lot of my life, have restricted a lot of what I could and couldn't do even as a young child. I mean, my memories of chronic pain go back about as far as my memory goes back. I'm talking like age 3, 4. So it's always been a part of who I am, and yet these different ones, I now have a chronic condition affecting my breathing, and another one affecting my thinking, like my cognition. It really forces you to think about, who am I really? Which, now that I'm talking about it, I realize dovetails with a lot of the stuff I do with cross-cultural work. Talking to people about working out who you are as a person based on your values rather than your behaviour. Because your behaviour shifts from place to place, but the values of who you are and what you think is important and living that out, you're that person everywhere. And that's been a challenge for me. How do I live out my values in different ways when I have these new restrictions on me? How do I have music in my life when I can't sing? I'm back in a place now where I can sing again, but it's something that's important to me, and so I found playing piano, even if I couldn't sing along, was helpful, and listening to music was helpful. How do I connect with my cross-cultural work when I can't write and research? Well, this is a new way I can do that, and it's been really important. I think our identity shifts every time there's a change in our environment, whether it's moving countries or a big health crisis or both. Working out what makes me who I am. It's not what I do, it's who I am, it's what I believe, it's what I value, and I can find different ways to express that in different contexts. And in that way, I've found these big health challenges to be a similar transition to moving countries. And that was the blog post that took me weeks and weeks to write, was reflecting on that idea. Because, yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. But the struggle's worth it. I'm learning some worthwhile things and learning to be gracious under pressure. learning to receive grace and kindness and care, especially from my husband, to not cling so much to such a self-reliance that I push him away, and to be really grateful for his kindness and his care. To recognize that when I push myself too hard, it affects him, not just me. I've had to reconsider a lot of my ways that I've dealt with life, and go, well, maybe I wasn't right. Maybe I need to care for my body better. So it's been quite the journey these last 8 months. I'm hopeful that within the next year I'll be pretty much back to normal. My GP in Australia was hopeful that it would, in about 6 months, the cognitive issues could resolve. There's no guarantees, but that was definitely hopeful for me. I hope to be back to writing and research pretty soon. I really want to get this new book well underway. But until then, I can talk, I can do video, I can work with people in person, so that's fantastic. Thanks for listening. I hope that was helpful in some way. I mean, this is just my experience. There's so many different experiences of concussion. But yeah, I think it's crazy how much I didn't know about concussion, and I think a lot of us, it doesn't occur to you until you experience it first or second hand, how much our brains are delicate and we need to look after them. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.